You can stay only until the end of the month. Days later, the rejected grandmother left in silence. But what she left, folded on the bed, broke everyone's heart. With her suitcase in one hand and a heavy heart in the other, 74-year-old Rosa Maria arrived at her granddaughter's door after years without contact. The sun burned her fragile skin, but the real cold came from Clara's distant gaze. You can stay only until the end of the month. And then the silence began. The modern house stood on a quiet street in Zaragoza, its sleek lines and pristine white walls a stark contrast to the woman who now approached the front door. Rosa Maria, 74, clutched her only suitcase in one gnarled hand, a small bag of generic medications dangling from the other. The afternoon sun beat down on her thin shoulders as she hesitated before ringing the bell. "You finally made it," Clara said, opening the door with the practiced smile of an attorney. She wore a tailored suit, her hair pulled back in a severe bun. It had been 12 years since she had last seen her grandmother. Rosa's eyes brightened. "Clara, my child, you look so—" "Come in, before the neighbors see you standing there," Clara interrupted, stepping aside. "Let me be clear. You can stay, but only until the end of the month." Rosa nodded, her voice barely audible. "Thank you, Clara. That's very kind." The house felt cold, despite the warmth outside. Glass tables, white leather sofas, abstract art on the walls, all immaculate, untouched by life. Rosa's worn shoes seemed to leave invisible stains on the gleaming marble floor. "Your room is upstairs, last door on the left. The bathroom is shared, but please try to keep your things organized." From around the corner, a little girl with pigtails peeked at them, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Is that her?" she whispered loudly. Clara sighed. "Yes, Lucia, this is your great-grandmother." She turned to Rosa with a tight smile. "My daughter, Lucia, she's 6. Rosa's weathered face softened. "Hello, little one." Before Lucia could respond, a tall man walked in from the kitchen, phone in hand, deliberately avoiding looking at Rosa. "Diego, my husband," Clara explained without warmth. He nodded curtly, eyes never leaving his screen, before walking away. "Dinner is at 7, Clara continued. "We eat in the dining room. Lucia has piano lessons at 8, so we keep to a strict schedule." Rosa followed her upstairs, the weight of her suitcase nothing compared to the heaviness in her chest. The silence between them echoed with unspoken history. In the guest room, sparse with hotel-like precision, Rosa sat on the edge of the bed after Clara left. She opened her suitcase carefully, as if something might break inside. Beneath folded clothes lay a small notebook, its pages yellowed, binding worn from years of use. She opened it to a blank page and wrote with a trembling hand, "Day 1. She didn't slam the door in my face. Perhaps there's still hope." From downstairs, she heard Diego's voice. "How long did you say she's staying?" "Only until the end of the month," Clara replied firmly. "After that, she'll have to find somewhere else." Rosa glanced at her reflection in the mirror across the room. Grey hair, deep wrinkles around her eyes, a lifetime of hardship etched on her face. But beneath the fragility, there was something else, a quiet dignity, a secret purpose that no one in this cold house could yet see. The kitchen gleamed with stainless steel and pristine countertops. Rosa moved silently through the space at dawn, careful not to disturb the perfect order. Her fingers, knotted with arthritis but still nimble, worked methodically, brewing tea, arranging cups, laying out napkins folded into precise triangles. When Clara entered at 6:30 a.m., she paused, momentarily startled. "I thought I'd prepare breakfast," Rosa explained softly. "We don't eat breakfast together," Clara replied, reaching for a travel mug. "Diego has protein shakes. I drink coffee at the office. Lucia eats at school." "Oh." Rosa's hands stilled over the table she had set. "I see." Throughout that first week, Rosa learned to navigate the invisible boundaries of the house. She discovered that her presence was tolerated only in certain spaces at specific times. The laundry room became her sanctuary. No one else ventured there. She mended a loose button on Diego's shirt, fixed a torn seam on one of Clara's blouses, all without mention. "Mama says I can't sleep in your room," Lucia whispered one afternoon, finding Rosa in the garden where she was discreetly watering neglected plants. "Your mother knows best," Rosa answered, though her heart ached. "Why not?" Sometimes grown-ups have reasons that are hard to explain. In the garage, while searching for gardening shears, Rosa discovered an old sewing box, covered in dust. She brought it to her room, cleaned it meticulously, and hid it in her closet like a treasure. That weekend, she walked 12 blocks to the market in the old part of town. The vendors called out prices for fresh vegetables and fruits, so different from the pre-packaged meals that filled Clara's refrigerator. With her meager pension money, Rosa purchased a ball of soft wool yarn, cream-colored and delicate. That night, after the house fell silent, she sat by the small lamp in her room and began to knit, her fingers remembering patterns from decades past. The clicking of her needles transported her to another time, 30 years earlier, when she had sat beside a hospital bed, knitting feverishly to keep her hands busy while her son, Clara's father, fought pneumonia. She had sold her wedding ring to pay for his medication. "I'll pay you back someday, Mama," he had promised. "Family doesn't need repayment," she had answered. Now, in the cold guest room, Rosa knitted by lamplight, creating something only she could envision. When her fingers cramped, she set the needles down and opened her notebook. "They live like strangers under one roof," she wrote. "The child seeks warmth. The mother builds walls. The father is a ghost. They have everything and nothing at all." From outside her door, tiny footsteps approached, then retreated, Lucia, curious but forbidden. Rosa continued to clean, to mend, to nurture in ways that went unnoticed. She watered dying plants, organized misplaced books, polished tarnished silver, not for gratitude, but because caring was as natural to her as breathing. In the eyes of this family, she was barely visible, a temporary inconvenience, an obligation reluctantly fulfilled. Yet she moved through the house with purpose, leaving imperceptible touches of tenderness in a home that had forgotten what that word meant. "And then the princess found a secret door in the tower," Rosa whispered, her fingers gently untangling Lucia's dark curls with an old wooden brush. What was behind it? Lucia's eyes widened, leaning back against her great-grandmother's knees. "That's for tomorrow's story," Rosa smiled, completing the braid with a ribbon she'd fashioned from a scrap of silk. These stolen moments had become their ritual. 15 minutes before Clara returned from work, when the nanny was busy preparing Lucia's afternoon snack, the girl had started appearing at Rosa's door, first with a broken doll that needed fixing, then with a book, and finally, simply for company. "Your hair is so pretty now," Rosa said, turning the child to face the mirror. "Can you come to my school on Friday?" Lucia asked suddenly. "It's Grandparents' Day. Everyone brings their abuelos." Rosa's heart leaped, then faltered. "I'd have to ask your mother first." That evening, Rosa carefully approached Clara, who was reviewing documents at the dining table. "Lucia mentioned a school event this Friday," she began softly. Clara's head snapped up. "She asked you to go to Grandparents' Day." Her tone sharpened. "That's out of the question. I wouldn't want to overstep." "You won't be going. It doesn't fit our profile." Clara shuffled her papers. "Diego's parents will attend. They're expected in certain circles." "Of course," Rosa murmured, stepping back. "And please don't encourage Lucia with these fantasies. I've noticed you've been spending time with her." Rosa nodded, her face a careful mask. She just wanted her hair braided. "We have Maria for that. She's paid to handle Lucia's needs." Later, alone in her room, Rosa wrote in her notebook, "Being kind exhausts you when you're not welcome." The words stared back at her, stark and true. The next day, Rosa ventured to the central plaza, where buskers played guitars and tourists snapped photos of the basilica. She sat on a bench, watching pigeons gather around a child, throwing breadcrumbs. An old man played chess with himself at a stone table. "Beautiful day," he commented as she passed. "Every day above ground is beautiful," she answered, earning a chuckle. At home, she helped Lucia practice a poem for school, hidden in the garden while Clara was on a conference call. The girl stumbled over words, frustrated, until Rosa taught her a memory trick involving hand gestures for each line. "That's genius," Lucia exclaimed. "My mother taught me that when I was your age," Rosa smiled. "Some wisdom only grandmothers know." They didn't notice Clara watching from the terrace, her face unreadable. That night a thunderstorm rattled the windows. Rosa heard tiny feet padding down the hallway, then a soft knock. "I'm scared," Lucia whispered, clutching a stuffed rabbit. Rosa opened her arms and the child climbed onto her bed. "Would you like to hear how the princess escaped the tower?" Moments later, Clara appeared in the doorway, her silhouette sharp against the hallway light. "Lucia, come back to your room immediately." "But Abuela Rosa was telling me—" "Now, Lucia." Clara's voice left no room for negotiation. As Lucia reluctantly slid from the bed, she whispered, "Will you finish the story tomorrow?" "Perhaps," Rosa replied, knowing the answer was likely no. After they left, Rosa stood at the window, watching lightning split the sky, illuminating a world that seemed to have no place for her. In the flashes of light, she could see her own reflection, a woman caught between what was and what could be, reaching out with hands that held nothing but memories and hope. The pain started as a dull ache in her side, easy enough to ignore as Rosa folded laundry one afternoon. By evening, it had sharpened, each breath a careful negotiation. She pressed her palm against her ribs and counted to 10, waiting for the wave to pass. "Are you all right?" Diego asked unexpectedly, catching her grimace as he passed through the kitchen. It was the first time he'd addressed her directly in 2 weeks. "Just old bones complaining," she smiled, straightening herself with effort. "Nothing serious." "There's ibuprofen in the medicine cabinet," he offered awkwardly, before disappearing back into his home office. The next morning, Rosa slipped out of the house before dawn. The public hospital was already crowded when she arrived, people lining the halls with various ailments. She took her number and waited 4 hours before seeing a harried doctor who barely looked up from her chart. "How long have you had these symptoms?" he asked, pressing against her abdomen. "A few weeks," she lied. "It had been months. We should run tests. Your blood pressure is concerning, and these pains could indicate several possible issues." Rosa shook her head. "Just something for the pain, please. I can't afford tests." The doctor frowned. "Do you have family who could help? This isn't something to ignore, Senora." "My family has enough concerns," she replied quietly. He reluctantly wrote a prescription, adding, "Come back if it gets worse. Promise me." "Of course," she said, knowing she wouldn't. At a small pharmacy off the main street, she counted coins carefully, purchasing only half the prescribed medication. The pharmacist gave her a sympathetic look. "There's a clinic for seniors on Calle Valencia that might help with the cost." "Thank you," Rosa nodded, tucking the information away. Back at the house, she found Clara in the kitchen, unusually home before evening. "Where were you all day?" Clara asked, not looking up from her phone. "I needed some fresh air, a walk." "Lucia was asking for you. She refused to let Maria fix her hair." Rosa brightened. "I could help her now. I've already handled it," Clara interrupted. "Listen, my mother-in-law commented that she saw you at the public hospital today." Rosa stiffened. "She must be mistaken." "Are you ill?" No, no, perhaps someone who looks like me. Rosa deflected, turning to organize the spice rack, anything to hide her face. That night, pain kept her awake. She sat by the window, finishing the baby booties she'd been knitting. Tiny, perfect things in soft cream wool. Hours passed as she worked by moonlight, her body protesting but her fingers steady. A soft knock startled her. "Abuela Rosa?" Lucia's voice came through the door. "One moment, cariño," she whispered, hiding the booties and her medication under the pillow. She opened the door to find Lucia in her unicorn pajamas, clutching a drawing. "I made this for you, for your room." It was a crayon picture of two figures holding hands, one tall with yellow hair, one small with black curls. "It's beautiful," Rosa said, her pain momentarily forgotten. "Can I come in?" Before Rosa could answer, Clara appeared in the hallway. "Lucia, what are you doing out of bed?" Her voice was sharp. "I wanted to give Abuela my picture. Back to bed, now!" Clara took Lucia's hand firmly. Over her shoulder she added, "Is that old woman still here?" Loud enough for Rosa to hear. The door closed, leaving Rosa alone with the drawing and her pain, both the physical one that twisted her insides and the deeper one that had no medication to ease it. She carefully placed Lucia's drawing in her notebook, between pages filled with her thoughts. Then she swallowed one of her precious pills with water and returned to her knitting, each stitch a prayer, each loop a memory, creating something that would outlast her pain. Dawn broke over Zaragoza, painting the sky in watercolor hues of pink and gold. Rosa watched from her window, a decision solidified in her heart overnight. Today would be her last in this house where she existed as a shadow. She dressed carefully in her best outfit, a simple blue dress she had mended countless times, a cardigan with pearl buttons, sensible shoes polished to a modest shine. From beneath her bed, she withdrew a wooden box where she had stored her few treasures. 21 days, she whispered, counting her time in Clara's home. 9 days short of the deadline she'd been given, but long enough to know what must be done. The house slept as Rosa moved silently through the rooms. In the kitchen, she prepared coffee, leaving it in the pot for Clara. She wiped down counters one last time, arranged fresh fruit in the bowl. At the small desk in her room, she wrote carefully, her penmanship elegant despite her trembling hands. The note complete, she folded it precisely and placed it in an envelope. "Plaza Mayor," she told the taxi driver an hour later, her suitcase beside her, lighter now without the gifts she'd left behind. The central square buzzed with morning activity. Cafes opening, street cleaners washing down cobblestones, early tourists consulting maps. Rosa made her way to a small shop tucked between a bakery and a tobacconist. "I'd like something that plays music," she told the shopkeeper. "Something beautiful but not too expensive." He showed her several music boxes, each beyond her means, until a small ceramic one painted with forget-me-nots caught her eye. "This one plays Clair de Lune," he demonstrated, winding the key. The delicate notes transported Rosa to her son's nursery decades ago, when she would hum this melody while rocking him to sleep. She counted her remaining euros carefully. "I'll take it," she decided, sacrificing tomorrow's meals for today's farewell gift. At the bus station, she purchased a ticket to Teruel, her birthplace. The departure wasn't for 3 hours, so she sat on a bench, watching families rush by, lovers embrace, life continuing in all its messy glory. A young mother struggled with a crying infant and a toddler. Rosa offered her seat, then helped soothe the baby with gentle pats and soft humming. "You must have been a wonderful mother." The woman smiled gratefully. "I tried," Rosa answered, her eyes distant. Sometimes trying isn't enough. Back at Clara's house, she had left 3 carefully arranged gifts, the hand-knitted baby booties for Lucia wrapped in tissue paper, the music box that played the lullaby she once sang to her son, a blanket she had secretly crocheted over 3 weeks, its pattern complex and beautiful, edges trimmed with love in every stitch. And nestled within these treasures, the note written in her elegant script. "She is yours now. But I hope one day she feels what it's like to be seen with tenderness." I knew that feeling, even if only for a short time. Now, standing at the edge of the plaza, Rosa glanced back toward the neighborhood where her granddaughter lived. From somewhere, a child's laughter floated on the breeze, reminding her of Lucia. Through a taxi window heading to the station, Rosa saw a familiar figure on the sidewalk, Lucia at her bedroom window, waving. Rosa raised her hand in return, forcing a smile. The gesture held both promise and farewell, though the child couldn't know it. As the bus pulled away hours later, Rosa clutched her handbag containing her medicine, notebook, and the last of her pension money. She watched Zaragoza recede, its cathedral spires disappearing into the distance. "I've done what I could," she whispered to no one. "The rest is no longer in my hands." Clara arrived home earlier than usual, an unexpected meeting cancellation freeing her afternoon. The house felt different somehow, quieter, emptier, though she couldn't immediately identify why. "Rosa," she called, setting down her briefcase. No answer. In the kitchen, fresh coffee waited in the pot, still warm. A single cup sat beside it, clean and ready. Clara frowned, pouring herself coffee, trying to ignore the unsettling feeling growing in her chest. "Hello?" she called again, climbing the stairs to the guest room. The door stood slightly ajar. Clara pushed it open to find the bed impeccably made, corners tucked with military precision. On top of the cream-colored duvet lay 3 items, arranged with careful intention. A delicately crocheted blanket folded into a perfect square, a small ceramic music box painted with forget-me-nots, and an envelope with Clara written in flowing script. "She left," Clara whispered. A complex emotion washing over her, relief mingled with something that felt uncomfortably like loss. She approached the bed slowly, as if the items might disappear. The blanket, when she touched it, was softer than she expected, its pattern intricate and clearly time-consuming. How had Rosa created this under her roof without her noticing? Clara opened the envelope with lawyer's precision, unfolding the note inside. "She is yours now, but I hope one day she feels what it's like to be seen with tenderness." I knew that feeling, even if only for a short time. The words struck Clara like a physical blow. She sat heavily on the edge of the bed, reading the message again, trying to decode its meaning. Who had shown Rosa tenderness? Not Clara, certainly not in these past weeks. The front door opened downstairs, Diego returning from his office. Clara heard his briefcase hit the counter, his keys jingling in the bowl by the door. "Clara," he called. "Upstairs," she answered, her voice unsteady. His footsteps on the stairs, then his figure in the doorway. "Where's your grandmother?" Clara handed him the note wordlessly. Diego read it, his brow furrowing. Unlike his usual detached demeanor, something shifted in his expression. "Did you know she was planning to leave?" he asked, sitting beside Clara. "No, she was supposed to stay until the end of the month." The words sounded hollow even to Clara's ears. Diego picked up the music box, turning the tiny key on its underside. The delicate notes of Claire de Lune filled the room, fragile and haunting. "My mother used to play this on the piano," he said quietly. Clara watched in astonishment as tears filled her husband's eyes. Diego, who prided himself on emotional control, who handled million-euro deals without blinking. "She left this for us," he said, his voice breaking slightly, "for Lucia." Clara unwrapped the tissue paper package tucked into the folds of the blanket, revealing hand-knitted baby booties, exquisitely crafted in cream-colored wool. When did she make these? She wondered aloud, running her finger over the delicate stitches. She wasn't sleeping well, Diego said. I would hear her moving around at night when I worked late. The realization that Diego had been more aware of Rosa than she had been struck Clara hard. Mama? Papa? Lucia's voice came from the hallway as she returned from her playdate with the neighbor's daughter. She appeared in the doorway, immediately noticing the empty room, the open suitcase. "Where's Abuela Rosa?" she asked, her eyes wide. Clara and Diego exchanged glances, neither knowing how to answer. "Is she coming back?" Lucia persisted, stepping into the room, touching the blanket on the bed. Diego knelt before his daughter, his usual corporate mask completely gone. "I don't know, sweetheart," he said honestly, his voice gentle in a way Clara hadn't heard in years. Lucia's lower lip trembled, but she didn't say goodbye. "She was teaching me how to braid hair." Clara watched as Diego pulled their daughter into an embrace, his shoulders shaking slightly. Something was breaking open in this room, not just the ice around her husband's heart, but something in Clara too, something she had walled off long ago. She wound the music box again, letting its melody fill the silence. As the notes spiraled through the room, Clara felt a strange sense of her own childhood returning, fragmented memories of a woman's hands, a soft voice, a feeling of safety she had almost forgotten. "We need to find her," Diego said suddenly, looking up at Clara with reddened eyes. "Your grandmother. We need to find her." The highway stretched ahead, a grey ribbon cutting through the arid landscape of Aragon. Clara gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white, as Lucia dozed in the back seat. They had been driving for over 2 hours, the radio silent, the air heavy with unspoken thoughts. "Turn right in 2 kilometers, the GPS announced in its robotic voice. Clara followed mechanically, her mind elsewhere. "Do you even know where we're going exactly?" Diego had asked that morning as she threw overnight bags into the trunk. "Teruel," she'd answered curtly. The clerk at the bus station confirmed she bought a ticket there yesterday. "And then what? It's not a small town, Clara." She hadn't responded. There was no plan beyond finding Rosa, and even that purpose felt jumbled in her mind. Part duty, part guilt, part something else she couldn't name. Lucia stirred in the back seat. "Are we there yet?" "Soon," Clara answered, checking the rearview mirror. Lucia clutched the crocheted blanket Rosa had left, refusing to be separated from it. Teruel appeared on the horizon, its Mudéjar towers rising against the blue sky. Clara felt a strange twist in her stomach. This was her father's birthplace, a town she had visited only once as a child. The memories were hazy, a plaza with a fountain, her father pointing out landmarks, a woman watching from a distance. She blinked, focusing on the road. The woman in her memory. Had that been Rosa? The central plaza was crowded with Sunday visitors when they arrived. Clara parked and helped Lucia out of the car. "Where's Abuela Rosa?" the child asked immediately, scanning the crowds. "I don't know yet, sweetheart. We need to look." They checked 3 modest hotels near the center, showing Rosa's picture, but no one recognized her. By mid-afternoon, fatigue and frustration were setting in. "Maybe we should try the hospital," Lucia suggested suddenly. Clara frowned. "The hospital? Why would you say that?" "I heard Abuela Rosa coughing at night. She thought I was asleep, but I wasn't." A cold feeling washed over Clara. She remembered her mother-in-law mentioning seeing Rosa at the public hospital in Zaragoza, a sighting Rosa had denied. The regional hospital of Teruel was smaller than Clara expected, its waiting room half full with Sunday emergencies. At the reception desk, she hesitated before asking, "I'm looking for my grandmother, Rosa Maria Sanchez. She might have been admitted yesterday or today." The receptionist checked her computer. Yes, she was admitted last night, room 214. Clara's heart stuttered. What happened? I can't disclose medical information. You'll need to speak with the doctor. They found room 214 at the end of a long corridor. Rosa lay in the single bed, her small frame making barely a bump under the thin blanket. An IV dripped steadily into her arm. Her eyes were closed, her breathing shallow. "Abuela!" Lucia rushed forward, but Clara caught her arm. "Careful, honey, she's sleeping." "Actually, she's sedated," a voice said from behind them. A doctor in his 50s stood in the doorway, chart in hand. "Are you family?" "I'm her granddaughter," Clara replied, her voice tight. "What happened?" "She collapsed in the plaza yesterday evening. Severe dehydration, malnutrition, and an untreated infection. We're stabilizing her now." He looked at Clara over his glasses. "She's been asking repeatedly if you understood what was in the box." "And does that mean anything to you?" Clara nodded, unable to speak. "She should wake soon. The nurses will check periodically." He excused himself, leaving them alone with Rosa. Lucia approached the bed cautiously, placing her hand on Rosa's. "She looks so small," she whispered. Clara stayed back, a strange memory surfacing. Herself at 7, falling from a bicycle in the park, scraping her knee badly. A woman had appeared, seemingly from nowhere, cleaning the wound, offering comfort. "Your mother will be here soon, pequeña," the woman had said, her face half hidden by a scarf. "Be brave." Clara had forgotten that day entirely until now. The woman's hands, they had been Rosa's hands. She was certain of it. "Mama, look." Lucia pointed to Rosa's bedside table where a worn notebook lay. Clara picked it up hesitantly, feeling like an intruder. Opening to a random page, she read, "Clara smiled today when she received her school award. I watched from the back row. Her mother wouldn't have wanted me there, but some moments you cannot miss, even if no one knows you're watching." Tears filled Clara's eyes as she flipped through the notebook. Years of entries, all about her. Birthdays. Clara thought Rosa had forgotten. School performances, graduations, all observed from a distance, recording a life Clara never knew was being witnessed. Rosa stirred, her eyelids fluttering open. She looked disoriented until her gaze found Lucia, then Clara. "You came," she whispered, her voice raspy. "We found your note," Clara said, moving closer to the bed. Rosa's eyes filled with tears. "Did you understand?" "I'm beginning to," Clara answered truthfully, taking her grandmother's frail hand. "But I need you to help me understand the rest." "You shouldn't have come all this way," Rosa whispered, trying to sit up in the hospital bed. "It wasn't necessary." "Don't talk," Clara said, adjusting the pillow behind her grandmother's back. "Save your strength." Rosa shook her head stubbornly. "There are things you need to know. Things I should have told you years ago." Lucia had fallen asleep in the visitor's chair, the crocheted blanket draped over her like a protective spell. Outside the window, Teruel's lights began to twinkle as evening descended. "Why did you watch me from a distance all those years?" Clara asked, gesturing to the notebook. "Why didn't you just come to me?" Rosa's eyes clouded. "Your mother made it very clear I wasn't welcome in your life after your father died. The divorce was bitter." "But you were my grandmother," Clara insisted. "You had rights." "Rights?" Rosa laughed softly, the sound dissolving into a cough. "Your mother came from wealth. I was a seamstress with barely enough to feed myself. What judge would choose me over her?" Clara felt the weight of this revelation settle on her shoulders. Her mother had always portrayed Rosa as disinterested, absent by choice. The truth, it seemed, was considerably more complex. "There's something you must do for me," Rosa said suddenly, her voice gaining urgency. "In the cathedral, ask for Father Inigo. Tell him Rosa Maria sent you for the envelope." "What envelope?" "Just go, please, before it's too late." The Cathedral of Santa Maria de Mediavilla stood illuminated against the night sky, its Mudéjar architecture a testament to Spain's complex history. Clara approached hesitantly, having left Lucia with a nurse at the hospital. Inside, candles flickered in the dimness. A few faithful knelt in prayer. Clara felt out of place in her designer suit and heels, her atheist upbringing leaving her uncertain of the proper protocol. An elderly priest was closing a confessional booth. Clara approached him. "Excuse me, I'm looking for Father Inigo." The man turned, his face gentle in the candlelight. "I am Inigo. How can I help you, my child?" "Rosa Maria sent me. She said you have an envelope for me." Recognition flickered in his eyes. "Ah, Rosa's granddaughter. Yes, I've been keeping something for you for many years. Please follow me." In a small office off the main sanctuary, Father Inigo unlocked an ancient cabinet and withdrew a sealed envelope, yellowed with age. "Your grandmother entrusted this to me 15 years ago, after your father's death. She made me promise to give it only to you, and only when she asked me to." Clara accepted the envelope with trembling hands. Her father's handwriting addressed it. "For Clara, in case of my death." "Thank you," she whispered. "Your grandmother is a remarkable woman," the priest said. "Few possess such capacity for selfless love." Back at the hospital, Clara sat in the corridor, staring at the envelope. Whatever it contained had been important enough for Rosa to safeguard for 15 years. With a deep breath, she broke the seal. Inside was her father's will, notarized and legal, along with a handwritten letter. Clara scanned the document, her heart pounding. According to the will, her father had named Rosa as Lucia's legal guardian should anything happen to him. A second document detailed a modest inheritance, a small house in Teruel and some savings that Clara had never known about. The letter began simply, "Clara, my beloved daughter, if you're reading this, I am gone. Forgive me for the secrets I've kept." Her father explained that he had reconnected with Rosa in the final years of his life, reconciling after years of separation enforced by Clara's mother. He expressed his wish that Clara know her grandmother, describing Rosa's unwavering love despite being kept at a distance. The final paragraph stopped Clara's breath. "If fate decrees that both your mother and I depart this world while you are still raising your own children, I entrust them to my mother, Rosa Maria. There is no one with a greater capacity for love, no one who understands better the true meaning of family. She has silently watched over you all your life, even when circumstances forced her to do so from a distance." Clara leaned against the wall, letter clutched to her chest. Rosa had known about this will for 15 years. She could have contested Clara's guardianship of Lucia after both Clara's parents had died, citing this legal document. Instead, she had chosen silence, watching from afar, allowing Clara to build her life uninterrupted. When Clara re-entered the hospital room, Rosa was awake, watching Lucia sleep. "You knew," Clara said quietly. "You could have taken Lucia legally." Rosa turned tired eyes toward her. "And what would that have accomplished? More pain, more division? She needed her mother, not an old woman she didn't know." "But the inheritance, the house." "They're yours as they should be," Rosa interrupted. "I've never needed more than I have." Clara knelt beside the bed, something breaking open inside her. "All these years, you've been protecting me, haven't you? Even from myself." Rosa's weathered hand found Clara's cheek. "That's what grandmothers do, mi amor. We love without conditions, without expectations," her voice faltered, "even without recognition." In that sterile hospital room, surrounded by the beeping of monitors and the scent of antiseptic, Clara finally saw clearly what had been before her all along. A love so pure, it asked for nothing in return. A devotion so complete, it had shaped her life from the shadows. "I don't deserve your forgiveness," Clara whispered, tears streaming down her face. Rosa's tired eyes softened. "There's nothing to forgive, my child. Love doesn't keep score." The morning light filtered through the kitchen windows, casting long shadows across the marble countertop where Clara stood, chopping vegetables. 3 weeks had passed since their return from Teruel, 3 weeks of profound change that had transformed their home from a showplace into something living and warm. "Need any help?" Diego asked, entering the kitchen in casual clothes rather than his usual suit. Clara smiled, the expression coming more naturally now. "Could you set the table? Rosa will be down for breakfast soon." The doctors had reluctantly discharged Rosa after a week in the hospital with strict instructions for rest and medication. Against all expectations, including Rosa's, Clara had insisted her grandmother return with them to Zaragoza. "We have plenty of room," she'd said firmly when Rosa protested, "and Lucia needs her abuela." Now Rosa occupied the same guest room, but it had been transformed. Colorful curtains replaced the sterile blinds, family photographs adorned the walls, and a proper armchair sat by the window where she could knit in the sunlight. "Mama, the school called!" Lucia burst into the kitchen, still in her pajamas. "They want to know if we're coming to the spring festival next week. It's for families." "Of course we're going," Clara answered, setting down her knife. "All of us." Lucia beamed, racing back upstairs. "I'll tell Abuela!" Diego approached his wife, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind, a gesture that would have been unthinkable in their previously compartmentalized life. "You called the school about the grandparents' event," he said softly. "I saw the message." Clara nodded. "It's next month. I've already cleared my calendar." He kissed her cheek. "I hardly recognize us anymore." "Is that a complaint?" she asked, turning to face him. "Quite the opposite." His eyes, once cold with professional detachment, now crinkled with genuine warmth. "I feel like we've been sleeping for years." Later that morning, Lucia sat cross-legged on Rosa's bed, watching her great-grandmother organize a drawer. "What's this?" Lucia asked, reaching for something tucked into the corner of the blanket Rosa had made, a small pocket Clara had never noticed. "Careful now," Rosa cautioned with a mysterious smile. Lucia's fingers discovered an envelope hidden in the secret pocket. She pulled it out, looking to Rosa for permission to open it. "Go ahead," Rosa nodded. "It's meant for you to find." Inside was a note in Rosa's elegant handwriting. "If I am no longer here, it's because you finally saw me. That is enough." Beneath the note lay a delicate gold bracelet with the initials LRM engraved on a small heart charm. "What does LRM mean?" Lucia asked, admiring the bracelet in the light. "Lucia Rosa Maria," her great-grandmother answered. "My name lives in yours." Tucked behind the bracelet was a photograph Clara had never seen, Rosa holding infant Lucia in the hospital, while Clara slept exhausted in a chair nearby. "But how?" Clara appeared in the doorway, drawn by her daughter's excited voice. "I don't remember you being there when Lucia was born." Rosa's eyes twinkled. "The nurses knew me. I told them I was just another grandmother there to see a new baby. I only stayed for 5 minutes." Clara took the photograph, studying it. There she was, 28 years old, asleep after 18 hours of labor, unaware that her grandmother stood just feet away, holding her newborn daughter with a look of transcendent joy. "You were always there," Clara whispered, "at every important moment." "Not all of them," Rosa admitted, "but the ones I could reach." That evening, Clara made a decision. Entering her home office, once a sacred space of isolation, she began clearing files from the walls. When Diego found her, she was taking down her law diploma and awards. "What are you doing?" he asked, bewildered. "Making room," she answered simply. "This will be Rosa's room. She shouldn't have to climb stairs with her health issues." "But your office can be anywhere." "She can't." Clara continued working, her movements purposeful. I've requested a 3-month leave of absence from the firm, effective immediately." Diego stared at his wife, the driven attorney who had once counted bathroom breaks as billable time, and saw someone both familiar and new. "I'll help," he said, rolling up his sleeves. Later that night, while Rosa slept and Diego worked on renovating the new bedroom, Clara found Lucia in her room, carefully arranging Rosa's photograph on her nightstand. "Mama," Lucia asked thoughtfully, "why didn't you like Abuela Rosa before?" Clara sat on the edge of the bed, choosing her words carefully. "Sometimes adults build walls around their hearts because they're afraid of being hurt. I did that for a long time." "Are you still afraid?" "Yes," Clara admitted, surprised by her own honesty. "But I'm learning that some things are worth being afraid for." She tucked her daughter in, noticing how the room had changed. Drawings now covered the walls, books spilled from shelves, and in the corner stood a small sewing table where Rosa had begun teaching Lucia to stitch. Their house, once a showcase of perfection, was becoming beautifully imperfect, a home marked by lives being lived, not just displayed. Clara paused at Rosa's door on her way to bed, listening to her grandmother's soft breathing. On the nightstand lay the notebook, still recording daily observations, but now the entries weren't about watching from afar. They were about being present, being seen, being part of something that had been broken and was now, stitch by painstaking stitch, being mended together. The lecture hall buzzed with anticipation as students filed in, taking their seats for the psychology department's annual symposium. 13 years had passed since Rosa had left her note on Clara's bed, 13 years of profound transformation. "Next presenter," announced the department chair, "Lucia Martinez, whose research on silent love as a form of protection has been accepted for publication in the Journal of Family Psychology." Lucia, now 19, with her great-grandmother's eyes and her mother's determined chin, approached the podium. She wore a professional blazer over jeans, and around her wrist gleamed the gold bracelet with the LRM initials, never removed in all these years. "My research began with a personal story," she started, her voice confident. "When I was 6 years old, my great-grandmother taught me something profound about love without ever intending to give a lesson." In the front row, Clara sat beside Diego, both now showing touches of gray at their temples. They exchanged small smiles, remembering. "Love is often portrayed as loud, demonstrative, and demanding recognition," Lucia continued. "But there exists another form, what I call silent love, that sustains, protects, and nurtures without requiring acknowledgement." On the screen behind her appeared a photograph, Rosa Maria at age 85, surrounded by children at the community center Clara had founded in her honor after her passing 2 years earlier. "My research examines how unacknowledged acts of devotion create psychological safety even when the recipient is unaware of being protected. These invisible bonds often prove more durable than explicit attachments." Afterward, at the small reception, a professor approached Lucia. "Your methodology is sound, but I'm curious. What inspired such specific research at your age?" Lucia smiled, touching her bracelet. A blanket, a note, and a lifetime of invisible presence. Later that week, Lucia made the journey to Teruel alone, navigating the familiar roads to the small house that had once belonged to her grandfather, now a weekend retreat for their family. Since Rosa's passing, Lucia had maintained a tradition of visiting her birthplace twice yearly. The village had changed little, the plaza still centered around its fountain, elderly men still played chess on stone tables, tourists still photographed the Mudeja Towers. Lucia made her way to a small shop nestled between a bakery and what was now a cell phone store. The bell jingled as she entered. An elderly woman looked up from her sewing machine, smiling in recognition. "Lucia, what a lovely surprise. I wasn't expecting you until next month. I had a presentation in Barcelona, so I thought I'd visit early, Senora Mendez. The shop smelled of fabric and thread, comforting scents that always reminded Lucia of Rosa. Isabella Mendez had been Rosa's closest friend in her final years, a fellow seamstress who had known her since childhood. I brought you something, Lucia said, placing a journal on the counter. My research paper. It's being published. Isabella adjusted her glasses, examining the academic text with pride. She would have been so proud, querida. Though she never stopped making children's clothes, you know. Even in her last months, when her hands could barely hold the needles. She always said that as long as her hands could move needles, she could still love someone, Lucia finished, the familiar words a mantra she had grown up hearing. They shared tea while Isabella recounted stories of Rosa's youth, tales of resilience during the difficult post-war years, of raising a son alone after being abandoned, of finding joy in creating beautiful things for others. That evening, in the small house that had once been her grandfather's, Lucia sat at Rosa's old sewing table by the window. She had been learning to sew since childhood, but only recently had attempted a project as ambitious as the one before her now. A blanket similar to the one Rosa had left 13 years ago. Her stitches were less perfect than her great-grandmother's, but they carried the same intention. Into each one, she wove memories, Rosa teaching her to braid hair, Clara learning to cook traditional Spanish dishes, Diego abandoning his corporate persona to become fully present as a father, family dinners filled with laughter and stories. When the blanket was complete, Lucia folded it carefully and placed within it a note she had written. One day, someone might read this and understand what it means to receive love without knowing you're being loved. The next morning, she delivered the blanket to the children's wing of the Teruel Hospital, the same hospital where Rosa had once been a patient, now featuring a small plaque dedicating the pediatric waiting area to Rosa Maria Sanchez. It's beautiful, the nurse said, admiring Lucia's work. The children will love it. There's a note inside, Lucia explained, for whoever needs it most. On her drive back to the university, Lucia thought about the journey that had brought her family from cold formality to genuine connection. One letter, one act of silent devotion, had unraveled the carefully constructed barriers around her mother's heart. Clara had transformed most dramatically, leaving her corporate law practice to establish a foundation supporting grandparents raising grandchildren, inspired by the realization of how many others lived as Rosa had, loving from a distance, protecting without recognition. Diego had found his humanity again, rediscovering the compassionate man buried beneath years of professional detachment. Together, they had rebuilt not just their family, but also their understanding of what family meant. As for Lucia herself, she carried Rosa's legacy forward through her research and through small acts of silent devotion, creating blankets for children she would never meet, leaving anonymous scholarships for struggling students, continuing the circle of love that asked for nothing in return. The crocheted blanket from her childhood still covered her bed in her apartment. The note, framed now, hung on her wall where she could see it each morning. She is yours now. But I hope one day she feels what it's like to be seen with tenderness. Lucia had indeed learned what it meant to be seen with tenderness, and more importantly, she had learned to see others the same way, looking beyond surfaces to the silent love that often went unnoticed but sustained the world nonetheless. In her rearview mirror, Teruel receded into the distance, but Rosa's legacy continued to unfold. In a transformed family, in a young woman's purpose, and in a note that had become not just a memory, but a living philosophy passed from one generation to the next. Sometimes, the deepest forms of love are the quietest, the ones that ask for nothing, give everything, and remain unnoticed until it's almost too late. Rosa Maria didn't need recognition or grand gestures. She gave her life in silence, through care, patience, and invisible sacrifices. This story reminds us that love isn't always loud. Sometimes it's hidden in small actions, in unspoken loyalty, in a note left on a bed. It teaches us that some people are not absent. They're simply loving us from the shadows. The question is, how many people have loved you silently? And did you ever notice? What did you think of this story? If this touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell so you don't miss the next unforgettable story. Leave a like and comment below, telling us which country or city you're watching from. That helps us create even more powerful and meaningful stories for you. And if this story moved you, be sure to watch the next video that's appearing on your screen right now. It might just touch you even more. Thank you so much for being here.